Am I wrong for acting like I didn't recognize my parents when they tried to reconnect with me? I was 21 years old, standing in the dimly lit church with the smell of incense wafting through the air, a familiar comfort during these holiday services. The warmth of the place didn't extend to my heart, though. Not tonight. Not after everything. My grandmother was beside me, her frail hand resting gently on mine as we sat in the pew waiting for midnight mass to begin. I cherished her presence. She had been more of a mother to me than the two people I had once called Mom and Dad. Growing up, my life took a drastic turn when I was just 6 years old. My older sister had fallen seriously ill. The weight of her condition bore down on our family, but instead of pulling together, my parents made a decision that shattered my world. They dropped me off at my grandparents' house without so much as an explanation, telling me only that I would be staying with Gran for a while. It wasn't until later, after days turned into weeks and weeks into months, that I understood the truth. They weren't coming back for me. My uncle and aunt, who had taken me in after my grandparents could no longer manage, explained what had happened. They were furious, livid, even. I remember the way my uncle's voice trembled with barely controlled anger as he told me how my parents had decided they couldn't handle both a sick child and a healthy one. It was like I was an unwanted extra, a burden they could shed without a second thought. From that moment on, I decided to cut off contact with them entirely. I was 12 years old, and I was done reaching out to people who clearly didn't want me. Life with my aunt and uncle turned out better than I could have imagined. They couldn't have children of their own, so they treated me like the miracle they had always hoped for. They would joke that the stork had just made a mistake at first, delivering me to the wrong doorstep, but had eventually corrected its error. When I turned 18, they formally adopted me. I wished it could have happened sooner, but the process was complicated and expensive, so we waited. Fast forward to now, and I'm 21. My sister had passed away between Thanksgiving and Christmas. It was a strange and surreal time, going back home for the funeral, but I made sure to keep my distance. I stayed in the back during the service and slipped out before my biological parents could even approach me. They tried to contact me through my uncle, but I made it clear that I wasn't interested. My uncle, protective as always, told them I wasn't available, and that was the end of it. At least, I thought it was. But tonight, during midnight mass, they found me. I felt the change in the air before I saw them. Like the temperature dropped a few degrees, and the weight of something heavy and unspoken settled in the space between my shoulder blades. I turned around, and there they were, looking older and wearier than I remembered. Unmistakably them. My breath caught in my throat, but I steeled myself. I couldn't let them back in. They walked up to me, their faces full of something I couldn't quite decipher. Regret? Sadness? Whatever it was, I didn't care. My mother reached out as if to hug me, and I took a step back. "Sorry, do I know you?" I asked, letting my voice remain calm and neutral. Though my insides were churning, my mother looked stricken. "We're your parents," she said, her voice quavering. I shook my head slightly, forcing myself to hold her gaze. "My parents are at home," I replied, turning away and walking back to my seat next to Gran. As we sat down, I could feel their eyes burning holes into the back of my head, but I refused to turn around. On our way out of the church, they approached me again, their desperation almost palpable. "You really don't recognize us?" my father asked, his voice thick with emotion. I tilted my head, pretending to think. "Oh, are you my dad's brother? I think I remember you from when I was little," I said with feigned politeness. I could see the hurt flash across his face, but I didn't care. Later, Gran told me that they deserved it, that after abandoning me, they had no right to waltz back into my life as if nothing had happened. But then came the letter, long and full of words meant to justify their actions. They talked about how they had tried to do the right thing, how they were hurt by my reaction, how they would always be my parents and that nothing could change that. Other family members chimed in, saying I was too harsh, especially since they were grieving the loss of my sister. But where was that sympathy when I was a scared, confused child wondering why my parents didn't want me? Why should they get a pass now, just because they suddenly remembered they had another child? I didn't know if I'd ever forgive them, but I knew one thing for sure. The people who raised me, who loved me unconditionally, who never abandoned me, that was my real family. And no amount of regret from my biological parents would ever change that.